YouTube, what is good? Today is a very exciting day on the channel because we have a special guest. Check that out. It is a Leica M10 with a 35mm Voigtlander f2 lens. Now this camera is not mine. I'm borrowing this camera from my father-in-law, so I got to make sure I take really good care of it and get it back to him in one nice clean piece. So I have this thing for about 2 days. Yesterday, unfortunately, it was raining all day, and I'm not going to take someone else's very expensive camera out in the rain. Even though I abuse my own equipment, I'm not going to do it to someone else's. So basically I have this camera for 1 day, and today I want to share my experiences using an M10 because I've always kind of lusted over one. It's a camera that I had a lot of expectations for, and today I want to share if they meet those expectations and also share my thoughts on where this camera lands now that the M10R has been announced. Where does it fit in the world of Leica, used Leicas, and just in the world of photography in general, I guess. So let's get into it. I'm going to share my thoughts. If you don't know the backstory on me, you've never seen a video on my channel, first and foremost, hit the thumbs up button and hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one. But essentially, my Leica Q is sitting over there on that shelf, and I got the Q about a year ago, and it's really changed my photography. I love that camera. It got me into Leica, and like most people joke about, that Q is like a gateway drug into more expensive like M's and SLs and things like that. So essentially, once I got used to the Q and I knew I really loved Leica, I immediately started thinking about potentially getting an M and trying other models because the Q obviously has a fixed 28mm lens, and it would be nice to get the Leica experience with interchangeable lenses. But with the announcement of the Leica M10R, M10s are now at their cheapest they've ever been, if you want to call it that, but you can get them on the used market for $6,000 or much less than that. So with that being said, that's actually one of the big reasons why I wanted to try out this camera. Is the M10 still good enough? Even though the M10R has been announced, can you get away with using an M10? Does it matter to get that extra resolution? Who's the new M10 for? So we're going to answer all these questions today, and I'm going to show you some of the photos I made with this camera because I made a bunch of them. So going into this, my expectations were essentially for the M10 to feel like my Leica Q, just with interchangeable lenses, and that's exactly what I got. The colors, the feeling of the files, just the way they look, the resolution, everything feels basically the same. There might be some minor differences that I can't see right now, but if you're familiar with videos and the work that I've done with my Q, you're probably looking at these photos on the screen right now thinking, yeah, those look pretty much the same as the video you made last week. When it comes to Leica M's and the rangefinder experience, I've used rangefinders before. I used an M240 in a video I made probably like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, something like that. So I was familiar with how rangefinders work. It's such a fun experience when you're using a rangefinder camera, regardless of if it's an M10, a film camera, basically any rangefinder style. The whole experience, you're kind of locked in, you're dialed into what exactly is happening around you, and it's a completely different photography experience. And for me, I found that with rangefinders, compositions are easier. I really excel at compositions using a rangefinder because you have the lines that you're working with, and you can really drop certain things in corners of the photos a little bit better than you do with an EVF. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe it's a matter of visually seeing the lines that it helps me. It's not anything that's like an end-all be-all, but it is, I don't know, just something that I've noticed. And that touches on one of the cool things about Leica M cameras in general. This camera feels exactly like the 240 that I made a video about 8 months ago, and I've never used any of the previous Leicas, but I have a feeling that the other M's feel much similar to this. There's not really many changes made to the design and the actual experience of an M camera. And something that's interesting about this experience that I don't know if it's just me, I don't know if it was just today, I never checked my screen. I think I looked at it twice out of probably 200 photos that I made. I don't know what that is. Maybe I'm just comfortable with the system. Maybe I trusted the meter in there. Maybe I actually know what I'm doing for once, but don't want to chalk it up to that just yet. But the whole experience of using a rangefinder, using a Leica, and using this more analog feeling system that you're really in tune with, it just kind of made the process different. I didn't really look at the photos when I was out there, and when I got home, I was in for a big surprise because I didn't think I made as many decent images as I ended up making, so that was a really good thing. Now, another thing I was interested about on the M10 was the low light performance. Now, when I made that video about the M240, one of the biggest hangups on that camera was the low light capabilities, and I believe in that video I talked about how that might just be something for me. I make a lot of photos in low light. I love going out to shoot at night, so that was kind of a big hang up and a reason why I wouldn't consider a 240. But the 240, for anyone who's just trying to get into an M and maybe doesn't care about low light performance, it's still a great camera. But for me, I did find that the low light and just the general file quality on the M10 compared to the M240 was much better. So now that we kind of touched on the M10 versus the M240 and my experiences between the two cameras, I do want to talk about where this M10 falls sort of in the Leica lineup now that the M10R has been released. Is it still good enough? Can you get away with an M10? And when I made that video about the 240, I talked about how if you do a lot of low light, you probably can't get away with this camera because the technology has moved too far ahead of where that camera is. In the case of the M10 versus the M10R, I don't think it's the same as the 240 at all. I think you can get away with this 100%, no problems, no issue. Now, would it be nice to have 40 megapixels to have better low light performance? Of course. So with that being said, I think right now the M10 is an option for people trying to get into a modern Leica and maybe not make as big of a massive investment as you're gonna make with something like the M10R. $8,200 or $8,400, whatever it is, that is a lot of money. And in the case of Leicas, paying $6 grand for an M10, $5,500 for an M10 is still a ton of money, but there's a big difference between $8 grand and $5 grand. So for me, I think the M10 is actually going to become one of the most value Leicas out there on the used market. You're going to be able to get these for a pretty good deal, and there's going to be a lot of them because people are going to get rid of them for that M10R because, you know, people want the newest technology, and people like us out there are going to be able to take advantage of it. That's what happened with my Leica QP. That camera came out, and within 2 months someone was already getting ready to sell it, and I scooped it up for cheap, essentially brand new. So I think the M10 is, for probably the next year or two, going to be one of these cameras where you can find great deals on it and still get something amazing. You can't go wrong. So to answer the question that's probably in the thumbnail to get you to click on this video, is it still enough? Of course it is. M10 is fantastic in my opinion. It lived up to all the hype that I gave it in my head. Will I be buying one? Still not 100% sure. For someone like me who does video as well as photo and has this YouTube channel, something like the SL2 still might make a little bit more sense, but we'll see. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll see y'all next time.